Hello and welcome to Bald and Bloviating. I'm your bald host, Mookie Spitz, and I will be bloviating on Inside the Infiniverse. Part 3. If you haven't listened to parts 1 and 2, first off, you are no doubt missing out. Secondly, this is a linear expose, an annotation, if you will, from the author of the new science fiction novel, Jonnie, Fazzoolie, and the Transfinite Reality Engine. I thought I could encapsulate the whole book in one sitting. Naive me. As we've slowly come to discover, I like to bloviate. So I have made it all of 24 pages into the novel after going on and on for 2 hours. At this rate, I'll record and distribute the audiobook faster than I complete this annotation of my own book. But I'm having fun. And if you're into it, welcome aboard for the ride. And let's see if I maintain this level of granularity throughout the book. We are, as I mentioned, on page 24-ish, first edition, paperback. If you're tracking along on Kindle, I'm starting at the section of episode 1 called Doom Scroll Roll Call, which focuses on the transition from learning about Ms. Penny Pitz and into one of her last interviews for her Thrillionaire Under 30 list. So to quickly summarize, in the opening, we met an elusive, evasive, mysterious entity called Alice. And Alice is in love, but she loves somebody who is either unable or unwilling, and likely both, to reciprocate that love. And since Alice somehow seems to be omniscient and omnipresent, that's the one she wants. We all want what we can't have. And with that elusive and cryptic opening, we got to meet Penny. And Penny, I constructed as your classic Zoomer, Gen Z female. She comes from middle class, upper middle class, New York Jewish emigre stock. Her grandparents were off the boat. Her parents did well for themselves. She's got 2 sisters, a doctor and a lawyer, of course. And she endures the younger sister dilemma of being overshadowed by these super type A women, a few years older than her, who have paved the way, leaving Penny with the mystery of her own identity. And that coincides with trying to discover that identity within a world ravaged by bubbles bursting, politics polarizing, and a cascade of ever increasing and frustrating insecurities and uncertainties. That all said, however, our culture has primed Penny with a distinct advantage over her male peers. Women today are doing better across virtually every category where we assign a success metric. College, careers, dating, The list goes on for Zoomer females being far more self-actualized and successful than their male Zoomer peers. It's a trend that was established a generation prior with the millennials. And millennials tend to get a bad rep, and perhaps it's deserved, but the lessons learned by the millennials and the successful Zoomers is stay flexible, leap at opportunity, and yeah, you probably can't afford to buy a house anyway, so get laid and go travel. And that's the context within which Penny enters the story. Penny is exceptional, though, from this stereotypical portrayal in that she lucked out early. Through a series of referrals and lucky breaks, she interned and then ended up working for a company that revolutionized the crypto industry, XTX, which deliberately sounds a little bit familiar. Working for XTX, she quickly rose through the sparse ranks of the company to become the marketing and PR assistant to the heads. And in that role, she managed to a certain extent and very much participated in hundreds of millions of dollars worth of super high profile marketing and PR campaigns. She hobnobbed with the rich and famous. She jet setted throughout the world. She had her own swank condo in the Bahamas. And everything was going Penny's way until, of course, XTX imploded with the crash. And they pretty much brought down crypto at the time with them. So we've seen how Penny, like a cat, landed on her feet, pulled herself back together, and again, with a referral, a family referral, she finds herself a reporter at Forbes magazine and publishing, and she becomes part of the zillionaire list, where she is interviewing multi-billionaire moguls, tapping into her old Rolodex, as it were, and doing more or less what she did, but in a very different capacity. Whereas before she actually helped run projects and was in the midst of major decisions and their implementation, now she's a glorified reporter, Lois Lane type. And she's exposed to this kind of wealth, but without really getting much of the benefit and with having virtually no power, which is frustrating to her. So she is on the train, headed home after yet another night out in Manhattan. And she is inspired by a strange experience where amateur acrobats shelling for money, as is so common on the New York subways, are performing. The boombox out of which blasts this hip-hop EDM mix transfixes her, and it seems to contain with it an odd inspiration that triggers an idea for her to start her own publishing and event concept that she calls the Thrillionaires Under 30 list. And the idea here is to feature folks who aren't simply ginormous in their balance sheet, but impressive in terms of their social media following and capacity for getting attention, each in their own way, with a special focus on startup company founders, extreme sports influencers, and other such celebrity types within the social media sphere. Really, the zillionaires of her generation. It's not just about the money, but it's about the attention. It's about creating celebrity. It's about being a personality in this age where attention is the real equity. And she does exactly that. So she switches from interviewing old billionaires who hit on her to interviewing a series of young mavericks who also hit on her. And she gets frustrated. For a while, she's excited, but then she comes to the realization that these young guns of the attention world are as narcissistic, narrow-minded, greedy, and awful as the older turds whom she hobnobbed with in the prior incarnation. So she's frustrated. But she wants to keep going. She feels she has to keep going. And she does so. And at the very bottom of her list, just before she leaves Chicago back for New York after interviewing another candidate, she sees this character, and his name is Jonnie Fazzoolie. And she knows him from her own social media feeds. He's got a huge bouffant of blonde hair. He dresses and acts outrageously. And the guy is just all over the place. He's bungee cording off of skyscrapers. He's wingsuit base jumping. He's crashing cars. He's acting like an idiot. He's speed eating while hang gliding. He's creating awful social media videos that are derivative and cliched. He has a bit of a following, but he's just so reckless and foolish and inconsistent that she's amazed that this guy can keep his shit together at all. But here's the thing with Penny. After being through the ringer, after being at the height of kleptocracy, with the crypto bubble and its crash, riding it all the way through, and then feeling PTSD and shell-shocked from that. After being thrust in the world of business journalism and meeting a host of other billionaires, only this time without even being able to actively participate in the excess, and after creating her own list to try to energize this sham of a plutocracy with a little bit of creativity and verve, she winds up with this Jonnie Fazzoolie type. And the irony of all this is he embodies the very, very worst aspects of everything that she has so far experienced. But here's the thing. He does it boldly, unabashedly, shamelessly, and transparently. Jonnie Fazzoolie is the living embodiment, in a sense, of everything that Penny has come to hate. And yet, he does it in a manner that is so bold and carefree, full of joie de vivre and recklessness, that it somehow taps into Penny's own desire to be a bad girl. The other reckless narcissists turned her off. But this maniac, for some reason, turns her on. And that is compelling for her in ways she still doesn't quite understand. She does and doesn't want to like this guy. She does and doesn't want to even meet him. She has created this mental and emotional image, this avatar of an avatar of this over-the-top bonehead loser in a way that is utterly alluring and fascinating for her. And that paradox and that contradiction drives her nuts. And whether she likes it or not, wants to or not, she finds herself arranging an interview and actually going to this bozo's penthouse on the Magnificent Mile in downtown Chicago to interview him for her Thrillionaire Under 30 list. She's excited, she's ashamed of herself, and she's never quite felt this way. Something's going on here and she doesn't get it. And that, more than anything else, is what excites her. For the first time that she can remember, after getting out of Brown, after hoping for the best, getting things happening for her that exceeded her own wildest expectations, only to be disappointed over and over and over again, Penny is almost eager to be disappointed in this maniac because, again, perhaps for the first time, she senses she knows what she's in for, and that, ironically, creates its own uncertainty. Penny is ripe to meet this guy. And she's not disappointed. As she goes up the elevator, the G-forces, the lightheadedness culminate in stepping over bags of garbage and takeout food. She can't even tell the difference. And meeting this guy who is 6'8", towering above her, wearing outrageous clothes, expensive but unkempt, standing there barefoot, talking nonsense. And Penny, in a sense, to simply reinforce this building paradox, is both utterly disappointed in this fool that she finds and captivated beyond her wildest expectations. And that's where the interview begins. I had so much fun writing this exchange between Penny Pitz and Jonnie Fazzoolie, and I hope you had fun or will have fun reading it and now me talking about it. In essence, to take a few steps back, I strive to create or at least capture the awkwardness of dating in 2025. Ostensibly, this scene drives the plot forward. You've got Penny Pitz put together this Thrillionaire list, going through the ranks, getting progressively more and more disappointed with the people that she finds, scraping the bottom of the barrel, as it were, and up pops Jonnie Fazzoolie. She's been familiar with him for a while just from her social media feeds. She's suspicious of the guy. She's revolted by the guy in so many ways. And yet, as I mentioned, there's something inexorably mysterious, enticing, even about the guy's failings, maybe especially about the guy's failings. Penny has spent her whole life conscientiously trying to do the right things. She loves her lists. She goes through checklists. And although fate has zigzagged her and roller coastered her up and down, successes, failures, now the brimming of a new success, she at heart wants to do the right thing, and she wants everyone around her to feel good. That's her thing. And this goes all the way back to her being the youngest sister, two older sisters who were dominant, experienced. She grew up in the wake of these driven females, both of whom launched such professional careers, both of whom excelled in going through their own checklists and knocking it out of the park to the point where she didn't even want to compete with them. She just wanted to withdraw. And the way she withdrew was to become a great athlete, because neither of the sisters did that. They were all kind of heady, leading to professional careers in being a doctor, being a lawyer. And she also stumbled into marketing with her early success at XTX, which surprised and alienated her family and friends. So as we've seen, she crashed and burned. Now she's recreating herself. And part of her recreation is redefining not only herself, but the definition of success itself. There we have this interview with Fazzoolie. That's why it's so loaded with paradox and contradiction for Penny. A lot of that is an artifice, though. It's a construct to create the ultimate tension between the Gen Z female and the Gen Z male in our crazy American society. I give a little bit of backstory and context to this throughout, peppered immersively in the narrative. And what I'm getting at is this feeling, supported by data, that women are just doing so much better than men. Men are in this compensatory self-victimization mind and heart set. And Penny hates it. Penny's been a victim of it. And this Fazzoolie guy, although he embodies that horrific manosphere, mansplaining, bullshit machismo with his crazy stunts, over-the-top narcissism and recklessness, he nonetheless embodies the spirit of transparency, and through that, a sense of honesty. He is an epic fuck-up. And unlike most, if not all the men, the Gen Z men whom Penny has grown up with, competes with, come to know, and grind through the day with, Jonnie boasts about his failings. Instead of withdrawing into a sense of victimhood, Jonnie just couldn't care less about anything. He's unabashedly hedonistic, dopamine deprived, he's a thrill seeker. In this sense, he's not only the complement or even the opposite in sensibility of Penny, but he's sexy that way. He's alluring. This guy takes all the risks and he takes all the hits and he doesn't seem to care at all. And Penny sits there mystified, fascinated, enticed, revolted, all of these churning feelings. And I throw her into this mix with this guy because in this quintessential nutshell of an exchange, you have what's being repeated across the country in terms of just Zoomers dating. And here's what I mean by that through the lens of these few scenes that carry on and escalate the drama and propel the narrative, where Penny is just trying to keep this guy focused. Penny has purpose here. She needs to interview this guy to see if he's eligible for her Thrillionaire list, determine how he might rank, and plug this guy, if he's viable, into her incredible Las Vegas show. Penny has already thought through a lot of where she wants to take her personal marketing franchise. She wants to make a name for herself. At XTX, she was a tool. She was an intern. She got lucky. But she was always just doing the biddings of the head of marketing and PR at XTX. She was young, even among the young crowd at XTX. She was still one of the youngest. And although she had her condo in the Bahamas and she hobnobbed with billionaires and she helped set up stadium deals and broadcast media campaigns, it wasn't hers. This Thrillionaire list is hers, so she is vested. And this Fazzoolie guy could either be her star Thrillionaire or a total bomb. And in ways, she cares but doesn't. She's in the moment here, and that's what throws her off the most. So you have her in her high heels that she changed into, dolling herself up at the door, getting ready for this weirdo. And she's more hesitant and afraid than when she interviewed Elon Musk or billionaires or a host, a gravy train of freakos just like Jonnie who are startup founders, inventors, extreme sports, exhibitionists, social media influencers. Penny's Thrillionaire list is very contemporary, very Gen Z, whereas the magazine did this zillionaire list before. Now, her list doesn't focus on the spreadsheet or the bottom line, the mere financial success of these people, but their capacity to work the commodity of our age, which is attention. And Jonnie is an attention whore. But here's the thing. This is pivotal to understanding not only these scenes, but the intent of my entire novel. Jonnie is a failure. As a society, we pin all of our appraisement of individuals, companies, on air quotes success. And we've redefined success in our age as attention. And Jonnie Fazzoolie sucks at that too. I deliberately wanted this Jonnie to be a loser. Yes, he's got this multi-million-dollar penthouse on the Magnificent Mile of Chicago. But as the scene unfolds, we find out that it's all bullshit. He's being evicted. And yes, he's made a name for himself, at least to the point where he's come onto Penny's radar. But that's all bullshit too. This guy doesn't have the patience, the fortitude, the wherewithal, the focus, and even the grit to be successful even at outrage. He's all over the place. And again, the reason I did this was because I want to show the frailty of the moment. And I wanted the connection between these characters to be genuine. I wanted them to be real people in real settings. Scrape away the mantle of their accomplishments or lack of them. Scrape away who they seem to be and how they seem to fit symbolically in our society. And put them in a position of the greatest vulnerability. And again, through the lens of a Gen Z female flirting and trying to get to know, and in a sense, being on her first date with someone that entices her, with someone that she likes, and with someone that she doesn't even understand in terms of her own unconscious desires to be with this guy. Jonnie triggers the shit out of Penny and does so in a manner that fascinates and reviles her. And that's the setup here. So she is cautious. Then she flips into being downright aggressive and rude. And there are moments when she's turned on, and within an instant, she is pissed off and disgusted by this guy. And then on the flip side, from Jonnie's point of view, he couldn't care less. He appraises Penny the second he sees her. She is hot and he wants to bang her. End of story for Jonnie Fazzoolie Jr. That's what this guy wants. He wants to have sex with Penny. But it goes further than that, of course, because Penny brings with her sex appeal an opportunity for Jonnie to gain more attention. Even though he sucks at all this stuff and he's a total fraud, here's another opportunity. And like most immature men, especially the Zoomers, the younger generation who have spent their entire growth period playing video games and watching online porn, he is utterly clueless about how to woo a woman. Jonnie Fazzoolie not only sucks at making money, sucks at his own obsession with social media and attention getting, but he sucks in his rapport with women. And the grand paradox of this is that he so unabashedly sucks at all of this stuff that a young woman who's been raised on the opposite, on trying to prove herself, on trying to extend her own personal influence by doing the right thing, is drawn to this guy magnetically because she sees in him, at least unconsciously, an opportunity for release, for catharsis within Penny. And I come out and I say this early on, something terrible happened to Penny when she was younger. Like too many women in our society, there's the deep scars, the hidden scars of physical, sexual abuse. And as this ghost lurking in the shadows of Penny's childhood memories, it has influenced her life in subtle yet profound ways, to the point where she herself doesn't even catch the glimmer of what they are and how they've impacted her existence. So with that, Penny wants to crack her own code. As we'll see in this narrative, Jonnie has his own secrets, and they're embodied in an overt, ridiculous way by forgetting the password to access his crypto wallet. And Jonnie is freaking out about a secret in his past, namely forgetting his password, while Penny is dodging and trying to evade the reality of her own unconscious pull back into her past. So you got all of this swirling around, and I throw these two together in Jonnie's penthouse. Now, the conversation and debate and argument and flirtation that ensues is, to me, a mixture of Alice's adventures in Wonderland, when Alice has these circular, ridiculous, absurdist, nonsensical conversations with the weird creatures that she meets in Wonderland. And the analogy is striking on a number of levels, because Penny is like Alice, meeting these amazing creatures, everywhere from the billionaires to now her own Thrillionaires, who are odd, distorted reflections of her own narcissism and desire on the one hand. And then you've got the mysterious, literal Alice, the being that is propelling this entire narrative. So how's that for a meta house of mirrors? And you got the object of both of their desire, the biggest loser on the planet, Jonnie Fazzoolie. And then Jonnie is always chasing attention and opportunity, and he's smart. Maybe smart's not the right word for Jonnie Fazzoolie, actually. He is clever. Jonnie loves riddles. Alice loves riddles. Penny Pitz is a stickler for detail and loves figuring stuff out. She loves to solve things. So, of course, they're back and forth and back and forth and back and forth is this teasing, ongoing riddle, exploring, withdrawing, getting closer, getting excited, getting upset, withdrawing. And round they go to the point where Penny has finally had enough. She gets up to leave. Jonnie won't let her, beckons her to sit back down. And then Jonnie hits her with a riddle. This is the classic gateway logical riddle. And I call it the land of truth and the land of falsehood. It contains its own self-referential contradiction, which, by the way, is the heart of Gödel's incompleteness theorem, which the book and the novels are going to get into later. But it also illustrates the paradox of Penny wanting and not wanting, and Jonnie not wanting and wanting Penny. Jonnie, Penny, truth, falsehood. Round and round it goes. A cat chasing its own infinitail in this strange loop of desire and revulsion. So Penny sits back down. Jonnie lays the riddle on her. Jonnie wins the bet in terms of fulfilling the riddle in the twisted way that he had promised. Penny actually acquiesces to the riddle being solved and the inherent contradictory logic that propels it. And Jonnie, meanwhile, has gotten into a wingsuit, stood on the balcony, and then launches himself off of it. It's a real thing. Go to your YouTube and type in wingsuit base jumping. It's a thing, folks. And there are sports influencers, extreme sports, air quote, influencers, where people do everything from literally jumping across buildings to walking on ledges to climbing skyscrapers to donning one of these wingsuits and flying at 80 miles an hour, 100 miles per hour, unassisted through a narrow canyon, skirting death by inches, wearing GoPros. And Jonnie does this. This is part of his armamentarium of social media attention-getting bullshit. Jonnie loves this stuff. Jonnie loves it because he's dopamine deprived. He's an ADHD maniac, and this suits him for the thrill he needs to succeed. He also records it and shares it to ostensibly grow his social media following. But as I mentioned in the book, he's not even really good at that. But for the purpose of this situation here, as I mentioned in the book, for about 15 seconds, the internet notices and abides Jonathan Fazzoolie Jr. And Penny, as Jonnie jumps off and literally starts spiraling around the skyscraper residential building off the Magnificent Mile in Chicago, Penny tries to capture this on her own camera, taking pictures of Jonnie going round and round and round. There's a telescope there perched on the ledge that Jonnie uses ostensibly to spy on his neighbors, and she tries to capture him that way. And she is mesmerized. She's surprised. She's impressed, and at the same time disgusted by this guy's stupidity and recklessness. Now, Jonnie, who's a moron in so many ways, happens to be good at two things, as we're going to find out, and we are finding out in the narrative. Jonnie, in spite, to spite, and despite himself, is terrific with flying. And this will become important later in the book. Spoiler alert, where Jonnie gets a hold of a personal jetpack. But I'll wait to reveal some of that when we get to it. But Jonnie loves the thrills and spills of doing crazy shit like this. So even though he's got bad vision and he suffers from Marfan syndrome, he is surprisingly intuitively coordinated and manages to not die, not hit a building or hit the ground, but spiral around, releases his parachute, and then manipulates the parachute to land right in front of a Starbucks and pick up an order that he must have sent in before Penny arrived to pick up his favorite drink, which is my favorite drink at Starbucks. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. A triple iced espresso. That's a value pack, folk, for a caffeine bomb for under $5, but I digress. And no, I am not sponsored by the Starbucks Corporation. And frankly, I probably should have changed that name too, so Starbucks doesn't come after me if they even notice this book. But that all said, Jonnie lands in front of the Starbucks, makes quite a scene, and Penny up top is stuck in Jonnie's apartment by herself with this maniac leaping off the ledge. And she resigns herself to this guy just being completely nuts, works her way back through the mess of Jonnie's apartment with certain hints and symbols, premonitions of things to come in the novel, which tie these different scenes together in many, many ways that I'll describe a little bit later. But before she even makes it to the front door through this labyrinth, through this obstacle course of junk and mementos and Lego and weird vintage pieces of junk and art, there's a bang, bang, bang on the door. Penny opens the big walnut doors, and there stand two Sheriff's Department officers with a warrant for impounding Fazzoulie's apartment. Penny figures that is the last straw. This guy truly is the ultimate loser. She got nothing, no meaningful information out of her interview. The guy literally leaps off the balcony, and before she can even make it out of his $1 million dump, it turns out his $1 million dump isn't even his. He's a complete fraud. And with disgust, she heads toward the elevators to get the hell out of there. And then Jonnie's cat, who senses what's going on, follows her, ingratiates himself with her, and they go back down the elevator in the opposite way that they went up the elevator. And yet, Jonnie Fazzoolie has burned himself into Penny's mind and heart. Everything that was attractive about this guy and revolting has been dialed up, as Spinal Tap would say, to 11. And by the time Penny makes it down to the ground floor, she is agitated and excited and disgusted, only for the doors to open. And of course, Jonnie is standing there, still in his outfit, holding his triple iced espresso, and wants her number. He wants a date. He's not going to let this one go away, because just as Jonnie has blazed himself into Penny's heart and soul, Penny has blazed herself into Jonnie's heart and soul. And Jonnie's reaction is to ask her out, and Penny's reaction is to give him the finger and get the hell out of Dodge. She hits the road. She throws her notebook with the notes from the interview in the garbage can. And she is done, she thinks, with Jonnie Fazzoolie forever. And Jonnie, holding his cat dejectedly, realizes that he blew it. He utterly blew it. But it comes as no surprise to Jonnie because he blows everything. This is just another failure in an endless string of failures. But, and this is perhaps the most charming aspect of Jonnie Fazzoolie, why this irreverent, shameless narcissist is actually, I believe, a very, very likable character, because even though life, the universe, and everything continues to punch Jonnie in the face as a result of his own malfeasance, irresponsibility, and selfishness, Jonnie just keeps going. He's such a moron that he doesn't even let obstacles like that get in his way, let alone educate him or empower him to change his ways, let alone grow up. So what does Jonnie do? Jonnie resigns himself to all this and then plans his escape. He realizes that they are onto him. And by they, that's everyone he has cumulatively ripped off for years. The walls are closing in. And I deliberately amped up all of Jonnie's problems to make his own trajectory particularly eventful and powerful. So after years of grifting, he's running out of room. They've come for his penthouse, confiscated. He's officially evicted. And with that, Jonnie realizes he's got no assets, no capital. There's very, very little left for him. Presumably, he's got that office that he described to Penny. He wanted to take Penny to his office for, But he doesn't want to do that. The feds, if they are going to try to find him to get him to pay up or at least pay for his crimes, of course, that would be the next place they'd go. So Jonnie hits the road with his cat, and he gets into his Vanta Black Tesla Plaid, also grifted, no doubt. And he peels out, heading to O'Hare Airport. He hits ludicrous mode, which is a thing. One item of note, my descriptions of the gear, the technology throughout the book, everything from the Freak 5 wingsuit and its descent, spiraling around the building, my description of ludicrous mode for the Tesla, all the technology, gizmos, and gears on Earth when we're here, and even the fanciful, speculative, super hard, super sci-fi stuff that I get into later in the book have all been thought out, at least to the point where I can make them credible. I've been in a Tesla in ludicrous mode, and it's as exhilarating and wild as I describe it, maybe even more so. I haven't been in an advanced space station housing a simulator of all reality, but I've gone to great pains to do my research to bring these to life for you in a way where it comes across as credible and exciting and fun. A lot of science fiction writers, or a lot of nonfiction writers, they just don't care. And to me, that's sloppy. And it also takes away from the miracle of literature. The more true literature is to yourself emotionally and personally, and that's another reason why I think Jonnie Fazzoolie works for me, and presumably will work for you, is that Jonnie is Mookie and Mookie is Jonnie. The words just flowed. When I was writing about Jonnie in particular, and all these characters, Penny, and as we'll see, Casey and Basine, I have known their archetype, if you will. They are all based on images and feelings and memories of people that I have actually known. And Jonnie, unabashedly and shamelessly, is me. I took the most exaggerated aspects of my own failings and my own strengths, and I pulled them through into the character of Jonnie Fazzoolie. So Jonnie pretty much wrote himself. And they all came from my heart. And in this age of AI, and I just heard the term, Gen Z people, I would have put it in the book, but I just heard the term. Gen Z folks call people who use ChatGPT and Grok and Claude and all the LLMs for their creativity as clankers. Like if a Gen Z person sees online text or imagery, even video, that is obviously LLM created, they call it a clanker. Like you're a clanker if you just do prompts and regurgitate stuff. I think, in all objective fairness, when you read this book, you know it came from my heart. I spent over 1,000 hours writing this book, probably more. 1,000 hours sitting on my ass at my keyboard working on this. And I did that because to me, that's the only way to make this process worthwhile for me, and as you, the reader, worthwhile to read, because it's not machine generated. I am tapping into my lived experiences, my vulnerabilities, and I'm projecting my desires, my fears, my pain onto the page as a personal catharsis. And through that, and through the hard work that went into it, came the joy of creativity and hopefully the joy of reading. So I say all this again through the lens of, here, ludicrous mode, the Tesla, and Newton's laws, where this is real. If you throw an object up in a vehicle that is capable of rapid acceleration, then the object you threw up will move up in space. But literally, your vehicle is going to move fast enough so that by the time it reaches the height of the parabola of its ascension, it's going to move. It's going to appear to you to move backward because your vehicle has moved that much forward. And this, just as an aside, is the heart of a lot of Einstein's relativity, where, as a digression, Isaac Newton never thought about relative motion that's at nearly the speed of light. And Einstein did, just as a thought experiment, the classic lightning bolts on a train platform, a train station. So if someone's standing there and two lightning bolts strike simultaneously to that person standing still on the train station, one to the left, one to the right, then from that person's vantage point, both lightning bolts appear to strike at the same time. But if a woman is in a train zipping by this person at nearly the speed of light, then the same rules apply in its own relativistic way, where the train is so much closer to one bolt than the other that simultaneity is proven to be relative. And that acts as a foundation, coupled with the Lorentz transformation, to become the foundation of reformulating and redescribing the essential model of how the universe works. Anyway, I digress. So they play a trick with Jonnie throwing up a cat treat that goes right into the mouth of his cat in the back seat. And they zoom off toward the suburbs of Chicago to find a shitty motel where Jonnie can check himself into to hide from the authorities and regroup. And Penny hits the road too, disgustedly. She's got another person on her Thrillionaire list who happens to be nearby, and she gets into a cab and she's on her way. And just like Jonnie's cat got a treat, a similar trick of Newtonian, and for that matter, Einsteinian dynamics, propels the lunch of the cabbie right at Penny Pitz, utterly humiliating her. And what precipitates Penny's risk of physical injury in an accident, but most importantly, her humiliation, is, ellipsis, drumroll, Alice. Alice. We hear the lullaby, which is the signature of the transmission that this entity has sent, summoning her lover. That lullaby is the opening greeting, if you will, an announcement to the characters and to you, dear reader, that this disembodied, abstract yet very real nemesis has literally entered the story. So the cab driver is listening to a Lebanese dance music remix, and he's singing the lyrics in English along to it. And Penny, thinking about Jonnie, always the good girl, does what she's never done before. She begins to, as discreetly as possible, pleasure herself in the cab. And I've gotten reaction from female readers already. I would never do that. No woman would ever do that. Well, my reaction to that as a man writing about a woman pleasuring herself in public is A, it fits the themes of the story. That's what I felt Penny would do dramatically over the top after meeting a guy like Fazzoolie for all the reasons that I've mentioned. This weird paradoxical combination of attraction and repulsion reaching their height post-meeting. And B, frankly, and I won't name names, I've known women who have done this. So I've written many, many things about sexuality. If you go check out my blogs on Medium, everything from the male multiple orgasm to Dan Savage's concept of GGG, good giving and game for sexual adventure and satisfying relationships, the 5 types of relationship, why we end up dating our parents. I've written a lot about sexuality. Does that make me an expert? No. But through my life, having relationships, talking to people, and if you know me personally, I literally ask my friends about sex. I've had unabashed conversations with young and old, men and women, where with time and the buildup of trust, I've gotten to know non-judgmentally a lot about their sex lives. Why? Because I personally think it's an essential aspect of ourselves as human beings. And I know most relationships don't cover that transparently and unabashedly, but to me, if you don't, then how close a friend are you? Anyway, that all said, and I don't mean to justify this scene, I'm merely saying that I have known women who, for various reasons, have pleasured themselves and have had sex in public. And I just want to add one more thing. It's actually a bit of a fetish to do this. So that all said, to me, this fits perfectly, dramatically, seamlessly into the narrative, where Penny, while the cabbie seems distracted singing his Lebanese remixed pop dance song, Penny is doing that. And then, almost as if it's coming in on the radio, Alice's lullaby hits. And then, boom! There's an accident. And Penny is humiliated, but not hurt physically. And lo and behold, who seems to be driving the car? The other car in the accident. A girl, looks about 7, wearing a Victorian dress. Very much like the Tenniel illustration of Lewis Carroll's Adventures in Wonderland. And then she approaches Penny, and the world seems to dissolve. And all Penny can see and hear is the girl reciting her riddle. And Penny gets it right. Penny guesses that riddle. And Penny's reward for that riddle guessing is, ironically, being thrust into the ultimate cold and dark and lonely place, which is where Alice is from. Alice is giving Penny, after humiliating her, after cock blocking, in a sense, Penny, Alice, jealous of Penny's attraction to Jonnie, takes her out of the picture, messes her up, and gives Penny a taste of what Alice has experienced and endured for unimaginable years. Exponents on top of exponents, a tower of exponents, number of years of cold and dark. And in that cold and in that darkness, Penny feels violated. So in exchange for that suffering and that isolation and that rebuke, if you will, Alice is offering Penny a gift. And that gift is the first hint of Penny's early abuse, which she has been repressing for all of her life. And that, dear listener, dear reader, brings episode 1 to a close. This is the third Inside the Infiniverse annotation. And we are now at page 68, going on to page 69 of the first edition paperback. And I've set the story up by introducing Alice, Jonnie, and Penny. And I've got Penny, who has been sidelined in some dying universe. And I've got Jonnie off to some hotel out in the suburbs to regroup and figure out what the hell he's gonna do next. Thanks for listening to this annotation. More to come. At this rate, there's going to be a lot of Inside the Infiniverses. But in the next one, we're going to dive into episode 2, which I'm calling The Bet. The first was the birth, and we've birthed the main characters and the main narrative. And the second, we introduce the bet that propels all of them inexorably to the design and eventual development of the Transfinite reality engine. Like, comment, share. I will be back soon with more.